Hi everybody, this is the original Josh and I'm back again with Kranzle USA. So here we have our Kranzle 1622TS and we are going to hook up our garden hose to the pressure washer. First we're going to point out that you'll notice that we're not using any quick disconnects on our garden hose to connect it to the machine, and we're also not using any gimmicky expansion garden hoses. This is a heavy duty garden hose that won't collapse, so you don't have to use one exactly like this, but we encourage you to use something that is also this sturdy, and you should use a hose that's at least 5/8 of an inch. This one's 3/4. So when we connect it to the inlet of the pressure washer, we want to make sure that we check for the presence of our garden hose gasket and also check the inlet screen for any debris. When we connect this, the gasket makes the seal. There isn't any tape or thread sealant that needs to go onto the garden hose threads. You just want to make sure that the end of your garden hose is completely smooth and that the gasket's in good condition. So we'll take and connect it directly to the pump. So now, there we have our garden hose connected to the pressure washer. The next thing you're going to connect is your high pressure hose. The Kranzle high pressure hose that comes with your K1622TS is a 10-meter hose, and you will notice that it has two different color ends. These ends are 22mm connectors. The gray 22mm connector goes onto the pressure washer trigger because it will swivel under pressure so your hose doesn't bind up while you're cleaning. So that means that the black connector goes to the output on the pump. So when we connect that, we thread it onto the output of the pump. Notice that I did not put any thread sealant or any tape on there, and I'm not using any tools. Hand tight is tight enough. It seals with the O-ring that's on the inside of the 22mm connector. So now, once we take our hose and extend it out all the way, we'll connect that side. Once again, no tape or thread sealant. We'll just hand tighten it onto the end of the hose, or on the intake of the gun. And there we go, hand tight. It's not going to leak. The Kranzle extended barrel gun jet has a bayonet quick release where the tools will connect to the gun. It also is equipped with a trigger lock to lock out the trigger whenever the equipment's not being used. Say you lay it down and your kids are running around. This is a safety feature so that you can prevent anybody else from spraying the machine, and then you just flip it down to operate the gun jet. The connector has two pins on either side of the connector sleeve that, when turned away from the side points where there is a little notch, it will lock the bayonet connector and prevent it from being actuated. So you want to line those up before you install your tool. Here we have Kranzle's Vario nozzle and lance assembly. Notice on the Vario nozzle assembly there is a hexagonal shaped collar on the bayonet fitting. That lines up with a female hex on the bayonet connector. So when you install the Vario lance, it allows you to turn and adjust the nozzle without the lance spinning inside the extended barrel gun jet. That does mean, however, that you're limited to 6 different positions of the fan orientation. So if it's not facing the direction that you want it to, pull back on the collar, pull out on the bayonet until the hex comes just outside of the connector, rotate it to the spot where it's closest to where you want it to be, slip it back in, and there it's locked in place. And you can turn this and that'll prevent it from disconnecting as well. Now, some features of your Vario nozzle assembly. If you look down the tip of the nozzle, you'll see 2 fins. When the fins are separated, there will be a straight stream that comes out of the nozzle, and when you turn the exterior collar of the Vario nozzle, those fins come together and squeeze that straight stream, and that provides you with a fan spray. So this allows you full operation from 0 degrees up to 25-degree fan just by turning the exterior collar of the nozzle. It also has an additional feature that if you pull out on the nozzle collar, you'll expose the entire brass fitting on the back of the nozzle. Once that is completely pulled out, this nozzle is set in the low pressure position. And then you can also, once again, adjust the pattern of your spray. This will be handy for some of your rinsing applications while you're washing your vehicle. Then we also have here Kranzle's OEM Foam Cannon. Some of you may not have known that Kranzle has a foam cannon, but Kranzle's OEM Foam Cannon is properly sized for use with your K1622, your 1122, and it also works properly with the Kranzle K1622TS. It comes with a 1 liter bottle. A 2 liter bottle is also available, and there are markings in increments of quarters of a liter on this bottle to show you how high you've filled it up. When you get done using your Kranzle Foam Cannon, you'll want to remove this and run fresh water through it to flush it. And when you're finished doing that, the foam cannon comes with a cap so you can seal the bottle and store it away for your next use. Nice thing about the opening on the bottle, it's a wide mouth, makes it a lot easier to fill with your soap. Now when you're spraying with your foam cannon, this has similar features to the Vario nozzle in that you can change the pattern of the spray by adjusting the one outer collar of the nozzle. And then you can also change the orientation by rotating the rear collar of the nozzle. So you can go from a fan that's horizontal to a fan that's vertical. In the Kranzle Foam Cannon, we have one of Dirt Killer's best soaps. It's the Holy Grail Car Wash Soap. It is a wash and wax. It's a very nice soap, and we're going to use that today and show you how well it makes our car shine. And then for our wheels, we are going to use another one of Dirt Killer's premier chemicals, which is Big Green Bruce. It's a perfect all-purpose degreaser for a lot of applications, and in this particular case, we're going to show you how great it works for removing brake dust. We're going to apply it with this Solo battery-powered sprayer, and this is a rechargeable sprayer. USB cable comes with it. You plug it right in the back of the nozzle. Once it's charged up, you get 90 minutes worth of spray time. All you have to do is squeeze the button on the front, and you also have the feature of being able to adjust the pattern of the spray by turning the nozzle. Lastly, we've got a couple of our Kranzle chamois here for when we do our wipe down process. So here we have all the tools that we're going to use so far today. We'll show you how we're going to flip the water on before we start the machine. That'll be on the outside of the wall. Just make sure that before you start your pressure washer, you turn on the water all the way. And when you first start it up, you'll have to purge some of the air out of the system. I usually like to do that by taking the lance off the end of the gun jet and just squeezing the trigger and letting it burp out the last couple bits of air. You want to do that when you first fire up the machine. And then of course, got to plug it in. So your 1622 comes with an integrated built-in ground fault circuit interrupter, or GFCI. The nice thing about the ones that we use these days, when you unplug the GFI, it no longer trips and doesn't have to be reset every time that you plug it in. But I personally like to, it's practice of mine that once I plug in the GFI, I test it, which trips it, and then hit the reset button just to make sure that it cycles back and forth, and then it's not going to give me any trouble during operation. Now when we're ready to clean, the very last step, we'll be turning the machine on the back. You got your on-off button right here on the back side of the electrical housing, and that's all the tools. So now let's take a look at our cleaning operation. While Josh Wagner is washing the Tesla, we have placed a GoPro on our panel amp meter. This way you can see while using the Kranzle tools, the amp draw never exceeds 15 amps. Obviously we chose the 1622 because it has total stop, so anytime that Wagner has stopped spraying, the motor and pump stop as well. This conserves electricity and maximizes the overall service life of your pump. If you notice the motor turn back on while you are not spraying, this is called short cycling. It's most often caused by leaking gun jets or leaking high pressure hose connections between the pump and the hose, or the hose and the gun. If it only happens occasionally, then it can just be more of a nuisance than a problem, but you should address any leaking connections on the high pressure side of the pump right away. However, if it's happening as often as once a minute or more frequently than that, then the machine should be evaluated for service right away. Notice that while using the Kranzle Foam Cannon, the pressure washer is only drawing about 9.1 amps. So with the proper foam cannon and accessories, the pressure washer isn't even drawing as much current as when it's rinsing in high pressure. You might notice that even if he pivots the gun jet, it swivels in the bayonet connector while gravity keeps the bottle oriented upright, preventing it from spilling. This is important because, if not all, but most of foam cannons in the industry have a vent in them to prevent a vacuum from forming in the bottle while we're dispensing soap. Unfortunately, this also means that if you invert or knock the bottle over on the ground, the soap may leak out. So keep an eye on your foam cannon and perhaps isolate it in a place to set it down during your wash process. You may see that Wagner is using brand new chamois to wash the car instead of a brush. This is partly because it is more gentle on the surface. It also gives him more control over how much force is being applied to delicate areas. Similarly, we have also selected the K1622TS to wash our electric vehicle because it sprays at the lowest flow rate. This will help us limit the amount of water that is capable of getting into sensitive areas, like around the door and window seams, as well as the sensors. All right, guys, so there you have it. We use the 1622 to wash our electric vehicle. As pointed out earlier, we selected this machine because of its lower flow rate, so we've got less likelihood of squeezing water into those areas where we're afraid that the electronics might be damaged. One of the final steps that we want to take when we're disconnecting everything, we've already taken off our gun and hose. When you take off your gun, squeeze the trigger and drain all the fluid out of the lance. You should do so with your VarioJet as well. You pop it in the low pressure position, that'll allow it to drain out faster. When you are wrapping up your hose, you should disconnect it from both ends, extend it out all the way, and it'll drain out as you're wrapping it up. And then most importantly, when you're finished with your pressure washer, take off your garden hose, turn on your machine, and let it purge all the water out of the pump. That's how we want to store it for long-term storage at the very least. In some cases you may want to winterize it if it's getting close to that time of year. It's good to store it with RV antifreeze in it or blow it out with compressed air, but now we can safely store it and not have to worry about it being damaged because of the weather. So thank you once again for joining us. This is the original Josh with Kranzle USA, pressure washer perfection. Don't forget to like and subscribe.